The floor they made me clean will one day hold my signature. I used to think humiliation had a sound, not a scream. Not a slap. Not even a cruel laugh. No, humiliation sounds like silence. The kind where people look at you, judge you, and decide you're not worth speaking to. That was the silence I walked through every night as I pushed my mop bucket across the marble floors of Kingston Global Headquarters. A skyscraper of glass. Money, and the kind of power that doesn't even notice people like me exist. I was the janitor, invisible, replaceable, supposedly uneducated. Just the guy who cleans after the real people go home. But I didn't hate the job. I hated the way they looked at me, like I was born to clean the dirt they stepped on, like I didn't dream, didn't feel, didn't matter, and worst of all, like I didn't understand them. Because if there was one thing nobody knew about me, it was this. I spoke 7 languages, fluently. Not that anyone ever asked. Why would they? I was just the janitor. It was a Thursday night, the kind where everyone leaves early. Except the executives who pretend to be busy enough to justify their bonuses. I had just finished mopping the conference hallway when I heard laughter, echoing, loud, and arrogant. The kind of laughter that only lives in tall buildings and old money. I turned, and there he was, Alexander Kingston the Force, the billionaire. The heir. The kind of man who never checks price tags, emotions, or consequences. Standing beside him were 3 other suits, CEOs, investors, the kind of men who wear watches worth more than a janitor's annual salary. Kingston wasn't looking at them, though. He was looking at me. More accurately, he was looking down at me. "Hey, you!" he called out. "Floor boy," I stopped, slowly. Even my mop paused in the air. He smiled. Not the friendly kind. The kind a person makes when they're about to step on something alive just to hear it crack. "You look smart," he said. "Let's see how smart you really are." One of the other men chuckled. I already knew how this would go. I'd seen it before. Powerful men using sarcasm like a knife. Kingston cleared his throat with exaggeration, then pointed to a thick folder on the conference table. "Translate this," he said, "and I'll marry you." The room broke into laughter. I didn't laugh because I saw what was on the folder. A multi-billion-dollar contract in a language none of them spoke. But I did fluently. "Come on," Kingston taunted. "You do know what translate means, right?" Another executive added, "Maybe he can clean the words first." More laughter. More silence in my chest. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to shove the mop into his perfect suit. I wanted to scream, but instead, I looked him in the eye, and I walked toward the table. Their laughter quieted as I reached for the document. It was written in Mandarin Chinese, complex legal, business, and cultural phrasing. The kind that even native speakers struggle with. Kingston leaned back in his chair, smirking like a king watching a peasant try to sit on the throne. "Well," he said, "need a dictionary?" I didn't answer. I just started reading, aloud, word for word, flawlessly, every clause, every term, every legal nuance. The room went silent, not the humiliating silence this time. This was a silence I owned. The investors stared. Their jaws tensed. The smirk fell from Kingston's face like a mask slipping. When I finished, I said clearly, "This section has a loophole. They're setting you up for liability on Clause 14, Paragraph 3. If you sign it, you'll lose not millions, billions." Dead silence. Then, slowly, one of the executives leaned closer and whispered to Kingston, "He's right." Kingston didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. It was the first time in my life I saw what a billionaire looked like when he realized money couldn't buy intelligence. "You," he finally said, staring at me with something between anger and disbelief. "Where did you learn Mandarin?" I didn't smile. "I didn't learn it," I said. "I grew up speaking it." Another executive spoke up, more curious than insulting now. "And the contract flaw. How did you see it so quickly?" I tapped the page. "Because I've written contracts like this before. Just not for people who notice janitors." That was the moment the room shifted. It was no longer about a joke. No longer about humiliation. It was about power, and for the first time in that building, I had it. Kingston leaned back again, slower this time, studying me like I wasn't a janitor anymore, but a threat. "You're not supposed to be mopping floors," he said quietly. I met his stare. Yet here I am. And here you almost were, signing away $1 billion. The men behind him exchanged looks, whispers, calculation. Suddenly, I wasn't a joke, I was leverage. Kingston snapped the folder shut. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ethan." "Ethan what?" "Ethan Lee." He repeated it slowly, like he was remembering it for later. Then he said something I never expected. "Come to my office tomorrow." 9 a.m. sharp, I blinked. "Why?" His jaw tightened. "Because you just saved my company more money than most of my executives have earned in their lifetime." A pause. "And I want to know who the hell you really are." Before I could answer, the elevator chimed behind us. Kingston stood, buttoning his suit. As he passed me, he glanced at the mop bucket. "You won't need that anymore," he said. Then he walked away. The others followed, one of them giving me a respectful nod on the way out. When the elevator doors closed, I stood alone again. Same hallway, same bucket, same mop. But everything had changed. My heart was pounding, not from fear, from something I hadn't felt in a long, long time, possibility. But as I turned back toward my cart, I noticed something else. Someone was standing in the hallway, someone I hadn't seen before. A woman, dressed in a sharp suit, holding a tablet, watching me, not with admiration, not with curiosity, but with cold calculation. When our eyes met, she finally spoke. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. I frowned. "Done what?" She stepped closer, her voice low and dangerous. "You just embarrassed a billionaire on his own floor." Her lips curled into a warning. "And men like him don't forgive that. The offer that wasn't a gift." I didn't move, not because I was scared, but because those words, "men like him don't forgive that," hit me with the kind of truth you feel before you understand. The woman stood there like a shadow stitched into corporate fabric, calm, sharp, unreadable. She wasn't someone who blended in, yet somehow I hadn't noticed her until she wanted me to. "Who are you?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "Vivian Cross," she replied. "Vice President of Strategic Affairs," a title that meant everything and nothing at the same time. People with titles like that didn't have jobs. They had power disguised as one. "So let me guess," I said. "You're here to warn me?" She tilted her head slightly. "No, I'm here to see if you're smart enough to understand the danger you just walked into." I raised an eyebrow. "Danger? I saved his company." "You exposed him," she corrected, "in front of his investors. You made him look blind in the one room where a billionaire can't afford to look weak, his own." Her tone wasn't emotional. It was surgical. "The only reason he invited you tomorrow," she continued, "is because he doesn't know if you're a threat or an asset. And which one do you think I am?" She stepped closer, close enough to lower her voice, close enough for me to see something in her eyes I couldn't read. "I think," she said slowly, "you're a wild card. And wild cards get burned in this building." Before I could respond, she turned and walked toward the elevator. But just before the doors closed, she said, "If you're smart, Ethan Lee, you won't show up tomorrow." The elevator swallowed her whole. Silence again. Only this time it wasn't humiliation pressing against me. It was choice. Sleep wasn't an option that night. I lay on the thin mattress in my one-room apartment, the kind where the ceiling paint peeled just enough to look like it was giving up too. I stared at the ceiling and thought about everything I had sacrificed, everything I had swallowed, everything I was told I couldn't be. People saw a janitor because that's all they wanted to see. They didn't know my father ran international trade negotiations. They didn't know language was my childhood playground. They didn't know that I once dreamed of being the youngest diplomat in history. They also didn't know how fast dreams die when someone else controls the paperwork for your future. A visa expiration, a refused scholarship, a family emergency that drained everything. One bad year turned me into something the world never expected. Disposable. But I had never been stupid. Just stuck. Now, for the first time in years, I wasn't stuck. I had something even the rich couldn't ignore. Proof of value. But Vivian Cross's warning kept echoing in my head. Wild cards get burned in this building. I laughed to myself. I'd been burned before, but I was still here. At 7:30 a.m., I got up. At 8:15, I stood outside the skyscraper in a suit I hadn't worn in 4 years, one I could barely afford back then and couldn't replace now. At 8:59, I stepped out of the elevator onto the 73rd floor, executive level. The receptionist looked at me like I didn't belong. "Can I help you?" she asked slowly. "Ethan Lee," I answered. "I have a 9 a.m. meeting with Mr. Kingston." She didn't hide the surprise on her face, or the doubt, but she checked the digital schedule anyway. Her eyes widened. "You actually do?" As I waited, I noticed people walking past, suits, heels, expensive colognes, and perfumes filling the air. Not one person looked at me with respect. Just curiosity. A janitor who got invited upstairs? That was a glitch in their system. Then the door to Kingston's office opened. And there he was. Same suit, same posture, but this time, no smirk. "Ethan," he said. "Come in." Inside, his office looked like a museum of power. City skyline, glass walls, shelves of awards, a desk that didn't just say "I'm important," it said "I own everything you see." I sat across from him. He didn't start with small talk. "You embarrassed me last night," he said. I met his eyes. "I saved you." His jaw tightened. "Those two things are not mutually exclusive." Silence settled. Not hostile, just honest. Finally, he leaned back. "What's your story?" It was the first real question he'd asked me. Not a test, not a taunt. A question, I told him. The languages, the background, the relocation, the failed scholarship, the night shift janitor job I took to help pay my mother's medical bills overseas. I didn't ask for pity. I didn't apologize for my intelligence. I just told the truth. When I finished, Kingston let out a slow breath. "You shouldn't be cleaning floors," he said. "Yet I was," I replied. "For now," he said and reached into his desk. He slid a folder toward me. Not like last night. This one was printed with my name on it. Position, Senior Cross-Cultural Strategy Analyst. Starting salary, $250,000 annually. Benefits, full medical, relocation assistance, international travel. It didn't feel real. I almost laughed. "You're offering me a job?" I asked. "I'm offering you a life you deserve," he corrected. It wasn't what he said that made me pause. It was what he didn't. This wasn't generosity. This was investment, control, ownership. But before I could fully process it, the door opened. Vivian Cross walked in. She didn't look surprised to see me. She looked like she was watching a slow-motion car crash she already predicted. Kingston didn't turn to her. "Vivian, we're done here." "No," she said calmly. "We aren't." She faced him, then me. "Before he signs anything," she said, "he should hear the part you're not saying." Kingston's eyes narrowed. "Vivian," she cut him off. "Ethan," she said, "do you know why this company needs someone fluent in Mandarin right now?" I frowned. "Because of the contract I corrected?" "No," she said, "because that contract is the smallest problem this company has." She turned to Kingston and dropped the bomb. "Tell him the truth. Tell him what he's really walking into." Kingston stood. "Vivian," she faced me again. "This company is under federal investigation," she said. My stomach dropped. "For illegal international dealings, hidden subsidiaries, offshore laundering, all tied to Chinese shell corporations." I turned to Kingston. His face didn't deny it. Vivian continued. "You didn't just save him $1 billion yesterday. You exposed the one person who could be used as a scapegoat if everything collapses." I felt the room tilt. "You're not offering him a job," she said to Kingston. "You're offering him a shield." Silence. My breath froze. Vivian looked at me, voice quieter now. "If you sign that contract, you don't rise. You get buried with them." Kingston finally spoke, cold as ice. "Vivian, get out." She didn't move. "And if he doesn't?" she said. "What happens then?" Kingston's answer was calm, too calm. Then he goes back to mopping floors. "And we both know what happens to people the world forgets." He looked at me. "You wanted a chance, Ethan. This is it." Take it or walk away. My hands hovered over the contract. A life-changing salary. An escape from insignificance. A door I'd waited years to walk through. But now I knew the truth. Every door has a lock. Some also have traps. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. Vivian stared at me. Kingston waited. 2 paths. Both dangerous. Both irreversible. I picked up the pen. And before I could sign, the office door burst open. Security rushed in. "Sir," one of them said breathlessly, "you need to see this! Now!" Kingston turned, annoyed. "What is it?" The guard swallowed hard. "It's all over the news. Someone leaked the investigation files. Kingston Global is being exposed." My hand froze over the contract. Kingston's face went bloodless. Vivian's eyes widened, not in fear, in recognition. Something bigger was coming. Something none of us could stop. Part 2. End cliffhanger. Reply, next part to continue. The leak that changed the game. The room didn't explode into panic. It froze. Kingston didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. For a man who controlled empires, a single piece of news had just shattered the illusion that he was untouchable. Vivian was the first to react. "What platform?" she asked the security officer. "Every major outlet," he answered. "BBC, CNN, Bloomberg, even foreign press. It's spreading in real time." Kingston finally snapped out of his shock. "Who leaked it?" he demanded. "We don't know." "Find out." "We're trying, sir, but—" "Now." His voice didn't rise. It dropped, which told me everything. The calmer he sounded, the more dangerous he was. Security rushed out. The door slammed behind them. Vivian stepped forward, eyes sharp. "This is what I warned you about," she said. The investigation was never going to stay quiet. Someone inside wanted it public. Kingston turned on her, voice shaking with rage and betrayal. "Are you accusing me?" she said. "Or admitting you don't know who's been sitting in your walls this whole time?" He stared at her for a long, cold moment. I was still standing there, contract and pen in hand, like I'd stepped into a movie where the script flipped halfway through. He finally looked at me. "You think you understand what's happening?" he asked. "Not yet," I admitted. "But I understand this. Whatever I walk into, it won't be what you promised." "No," he said. "It'll be more than that." I raised an eyebrow. "More danger, more lies, or more prison time if this goes wrong?" He didn't deny it. Vivian crossed her arms. "You don't owe him anything, Ethan. Walk away." Kingston stepped toward me. "I'm not the villain here," he said. "There are bigger players involved. People who don't get caught. People who don't leave paper trails." "Then why are you the one being investigated?" I asked. He let out a low breath. "Because I'm the visible one, the one with the name, the one they can destroy publicly," Vivian added, "and the one who needs a fluent Mandarin-speaking analyst to stand between him and the federal hammer." Her voice was no longer guesswork. It was accusation. Kingston glared at her. "Why are you still here, Vivian?" She shrugged. "Maybe because someone in this room should tell him the truth." My head was spinning, but I stayed silent. I needed to hear everything. Lies reveal themselves faster when you don't interrupt them. Vivian turned to me. "This leak wasn't random. It was timed, deliberate. Whoever released it knows exactly what happens next, and they're already several moves ahead." "And who would do that?" I asked. She gave a pointed look at Kingston. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe someone tired of letting one arrogant billionaire hold all the keys." Kingston slammed his fist on the desk. "You think I leaked my own investigation?" Vivian didn't flinch. "I think you're not as in control as you pretend." The tension in the air was sharp enough to cut. Then Kingston looked at me again. "Really?" Looked as if reassessing whether I was still useful or already a liability. "Ethan," he said, voice lower now, "I brought you here because I don't hire people to obey me. I hire people who can think. People who can save me when others fail." "So I'd be your shield," I said. "No," he corrected. "You'd be my ace, the one no one expects. The one who speaks the language no one else in this building can even understand." Vivian scoffed. "He won't be your ace. He'll be your scapegoat." Before I could respond, Kingston's phone buzzed. He checked the screen. His face changed. Not fear, not anger, something worse, urgency. He looked at us both. The board wants an emergency meeting. They're already gathering upstairs. The board? Vivian echoed. So the wolves are here. He nodded. They want answers. And they'll want someone's head for this, she said. That's when Kingston looked straight at me and said, if you walk out now, this story eats the weakest person in the room. And like it or not, that's you. I stared at him. He wasn't threatening me, he was stating a fact. Vivian stepped in front of me. Protective, almost instinctively. Don't listen to him. You think I'm the worst option? Kingston cut in. You have no idea what this company looks like without me holding the walls up. You think I'm corrupt? Wait until you meet the men trying to replace me. Vivian's voice went cold. The board won't let him stay in power. They never do. Scandals don't end with justice. They end with sacrifice. He turned to me again. And I'd rather sacrifice a board member than you. If you're smart enough to stand on the right side of the fire. My pulse quickened. This was no longer a job offer. This was a war recruitment. A quiet war. The kind fought with law firms, leaks, media, offshore accounts, and buried truths. I didn't know who was lying more. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe the truth was already poisoned. But before I could ask another question, the intercom beeped. Mr. Kingston, the receptionist's voice crackled through. There's someone here demanding to see you. He says if you don't come out, he'll bring the FBI in. Kingston stiffened. Vivian whispered. That's not a board member. No one moved. Then the intercom spoke again. He says his name is Agent Cole Ramsey. Federal Bureau of Investigation. My blood ran cold. Vivian looked at me. This is the part where smart people disappear, she murmured. Kingston turned to me one last time. You want truth? You want justice? You want to know why you were mocked, ignored, underestimated? He pointed to the door. Then come with me. See how the world really works. He didn't wait for an answer. He walked out. Vivian looked at me. You don't owe him anything, she said. But if you go with him, you'll never be invisible again. That was the thing. For years I had been a ghost in my own life, a silent asset no one valued, a multilingual mind pushing a mop, a man born for strategy forced into silence because people like Kingston decided who mattered. And suddenly, the world was forcing me to matter. I set the pen down, and I followed Kingston out of the office. Vivian's voice called after me. Ethan, whatever side you choose, just remember, the person who pulls you up can also be the one who lets you fall. I didn't turn back, not because I wasn't afraid, but because I was done being stepped on. We walked down the executive hallway, Kingston in front, me behind him, toward the man who carried the weight of federal law and could end everything in seconds. And just as we reached the glass doors of the lobby, we saw him, tall, calm, black suit, badge in hand, Agent Cole Ramsey, surrounded by 4 more agents. Kingston opened his mouth to speak, but the agent raised a hand, stopping him cold. Alexander Kingston, he said, voice firm and unmistakable. You're under federal order to comply with our investigation. Kingston didn't blink. Am I under arrest? Not yet. But you could be, Vivian's voice echoed behind us. She'd followed Agent Ramsey, then turned and looked directly at me. Ethan Lee? He asked. I froze. I hadn't said a word. Hadn't signed anything. I was still a janitor on payroll. How do you know my name? I asked. Ramsey stepped closer. Because your name, he said, is on the leaked documents. My heart stopped. Vivian's eyes widened. Kingston's jaw clenched. That's impossible, I whispered. I didn't leak anything. I didn't even know. Ramsey cut me off. Whether you did or didn't doesn't matter right now. He reached into his coat and pulled out a warrant with my name printed on it. You're being summoned for questioning, he said. Effective immediately. The room spun. It didn't matter that I was innocent. Someone had placed me in the line of fire. I wasn't a shield. I wasn't an ace. I was a target, and whoever put my name in that leak knew exactly what they were doing. Ramsey stepped closer. "Ethan Lee," he said. "You need to come with us now," Kingston spoke sharply. "He's under my employment?" "No," Ramsey replied. "He's under federal jurisdiction." Two agents moved toward me. My life, my tiny, invisible, underpaid life, was suddenly the center of a billion-dollar storm. And as they reached for me, one thought hit me harder than fear. Someone wanted me silenced before I ever got to speak. The man they tried to turn into a ghost. The agents didn't handcuff me. That almost made it worse. Cuffs say you're dangerous. No, cuffs say you're already caught. They walked me through the lobby as if I were a guest being escorted to a meeting, not a man being pulled into a legal battlefield I hadn't chosen. Employees watched. Some whispered. Some stared. Some recorded on their phones pretending not to. Just yesterday, I was the janitor nobody saw. Now I was the scandal everybody suddenly cared about. Kingston tried one last time. "Agent Ramsey, you don't have the right to..." Ramsey didn't even look at him. "You're welcome to contact your legal team, Mr. Kingston," he said calmly. "But this man is coming with us." Vivian's voice shot across the lobby like a warning flare. "Ethan, don't say a word to them." "Not one," I nodded. For the first time, I was seeing her not as an executive, but as someone who understood the cost of silence and the power of the wrong sentence. Then the elevator doors closed and everything familiar disappeared. The interrogation room wasn't dramatic. No one slammed fists on tables. No one shouted. The danger wasn't loud, it was clean, polite, procedural. Agent Ramsey sat across from me. Hands folded, a recorder blinked red in the center of the table. "Just to clarify," I said calmly, "I am not under arrest?" "Correct," he replied. "You're here voluntarily." "Voluntarily," I repeated. "Meaning if I stood up and walked out, you'd be escorted back inside," he finished. "Because voluntary here means you're not in cuffs. Not that you're free, so that's how the game worked. Legal words with invisible chains." He opened a folder. Inside, my name, my address, my work record, even my immigration file. "So, Ethan Lee," Ramsey began, "you've worked at Kingston Global for 9 months. Night shift janitorial staff. No previous criminal record. Strong academic background overseas. Fluent in multiple languages." He looked up. "That's unusual for a janitor." "I didn't know intelligence disqualified someone from cleaning," I replied. He gave the smallest hint of a smirk. "Point taken." He tapped the file, the leaked documents, confidential. "Files tied to the ongoing Kingston investigation have metadata linking them to your employee login credentials." I stared at him. "My login? I don't access files. I clean floors." "That's why we're talking," Ramsey said. "If you were a hacker, we'd treat you like one. But you look like someone who didn't even know he was in the middle of a war. So you believe me?" He leaned back. "I believe you don't fit the profile. But believing you and clearing you are two very different things." Then he slid a printed page toward me. A screenshot. My employee profile. My ID number. My digital login stamp. Time-stamped to the exact minute the leaks went public. I felt the room tilt. "That's impossible," I said. "I was in Kingston's office." "With witnesses," Ramsey nodded. "Which means either someone used your login without your knowledge, or you've been preparing for this conversation for a long time." "I didn't leak anything," I said, steady. "And if someone used my login, that means someone wanted this to point to you," he finished. "The truth was a snake tightening its coils. Not random. Not accidental. Arranged. Who benefits from framing me?" I asked. He raised a brow. "You tell me. Someone who sees you as expendable? Invisible? Useful?" I thought of Kingston's offer. I thought of Vivian's warning. I thought of every elevator I was never allowed to use. Maybe I was never a threat until I opened my mouth. Now I was both threat and tool. Ramsey closed the file. "We're done for now," he said. "But you're not cleared. You're not charged. You're in the middle." He stood. "And the middle is the most dangerous place to be. They released me, not home, but back into the storm. Outside the federal building, the press had gathered like vultures. Microphones, flashing cameras, news vans. To them, I wasn't Ethan. I was headline potential. Mr. Lee, were you involved in the Kingston leaks? Are you working with federal authorities? Did Kingston pay you to cover up evidence? Are you his scapegoat or his accomplice? I didn't answer. I kept walking until a black sedan pulled up beside the curb. The window rolled. "Down, Vivian, get in," she said. I didn't hesitate. We drove in silence for a minute before she finally asked, "What did they say?" "That my login was used to leak the files." She nodded slowly. "Then it's exactly as I thought. You knew this was coming?" "No, but I knew someone wanted you in the crosshairs." I turned to her. "Who?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her bag, pulled out a folder, and handed it to me. Documents, photographs, board member bios. "Offshore account trails, travel records. You're not the only one they tried to bury," she said. "You're just the newest." I flipped through page after page of corruption hidden under layers of corporate polish. It wasn't just Kingston. It was the board, the investors, the international partners, the subsidiaries. Everything was rotten. Vivian wasn't exaggerating when she said this wasn't about one man. It was an empire built on invisible crimes. "So why help me?" I asked. Her expression shifted. Not soft, not sentimental, but real. "Because I've spent 10 years watching powerful men rewrite reality." "And you?" She looked at me. "You ruined their script without even meaning to." She wasn't helping me because I mattered. She was helping me because truth mattered. "There's more," she said. The leak wasn't meant to expose Kingston. It was meant to force the investigation to move faster before he could cut a deal. Who would want that? Someone who stands to gain if Kingston falls first. She turned the wheel sharply, pulling into an underground garage. "We're not fighting one enemy, Ethan. We're fighting a hierarchy of them. And they don't lose quietly." As the engine shut off, she faced me fully. "You have two options," she said. "Option 1, walk away. Let the system chew you up. Let them attach your name to the scandal and erase you. And option 2, fight back. Not for Kingston. Not for me. For yourself." "How?" Her eyes narrowed like a strategist mapping a war front, by becoming the one thing they never prepared for. "And what's that?" She smiled. "A janitor who knows where the dirt really is." I stared back at her. A nobody on paper. A threat in reality. A witness with nothing left to lose. For the first time, I understood. I wasn't in this story by accident. I was dangerous because I wasn't supposed to matter, which meant if I chose to matter, I could bring the entire tower down. Vivian opened her door. "There's someone you need to meet." "Who?" "The person who leaked the files." My pulse kicked hard. "You know who did it?" She nodded. "And they're waiting upstairs." I stepped out of the car. The air suddenly felt heavier. "Just one thing," she said before we walked toward the elevator. "Whoever leaked those documents didn't just put your name in them." She paused. "They also left a message, meant for you." The elevator doors slid open, and before I could ask what message, the door shut, and we started ascending toward the floor, where the person who turned my life upside down was waiting. Someone who knew me, someone who chose me, someone who wanted me in the fire, whoever they were. They had just made me a player in a game I never asked to join. But now, I wasn't planning on leaving, not quietly, not ever. The billion-dollar truth. The elevator climbed without sound, but inside me everything was shaking. Not fear, readiness. I wasn't the same man who mopped hallways in silence. Whatever waited at the top of this building wasn't just a person. It was the answer to a question I hadn't known I was asking. Why me? Vivian watched me, reading the tension in my shoulders. "Before we walk through that door," she said, "understand something." I looked at her. "This isn't just about proving your innocence. It's about choosing who you become when the world finally sees you." I nodded. I already knew. The world had never seen me because I had been playing small, but now the world had named me criminal, suspect, leak. And something inside me refused to die quietly. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. We stepped into a private floor. No employees, no security, just one glass office at the end of the hallway, light spilling out through the windows. Inside, one person sat with their back turned to us. The city skyline blazed. Behind them, like a backdrop to a confession, Vivian didn't introduce us. The person turned, and my breath stopped. It wasn't Kingston. Not a board member, not a stranger. It was Lena Ward, the company's lead software engineer, the same woman who fixed the office Wi-Fi twice a week while executives treated her like furniture. The same woman who once ate lunch in the stairwell because the Innovation Lounge was for senior staff only. The woman everyone ignored, just like they ignored me. You? I said, stunned. You leaked the files? She nodded. Vivian stepped back, silently giving us space. Why? I asked. Lena didn't rush her answer. She stood, walked to the window, and spoke while staring out at the city, like she hated the view and everything it represented. Because I've spent 5 years building systems for men who think data is a weapon. I watched contracts get rewritten at midnight to hide fraud. I watched offshore accounts get disguised as charity funds. I watched this company destroy people who got in the way. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't afraid. She was done being silent. And yesterday, she continued, I watched you tear down a boardroom full of smug billionaires by doing something simple. Telling the truth. She turned to me. Then. And that's when I knew you were the one they'd never see coming. I stared at her. So you used my login? No, she said quickly. That part wasn't me. I frowned. Then who? Vivian stepped forward. The leak had 2 parts, she clarified. Lena got the documents out. Someone else connected your login to them. I felt a cold wave spread through me. Meaning someone inside the company wants me blamed. Lena nodded. Someone who saw you as a perfect decoy. Someone who knew the moment your name was tied to the leak, the federal investigation would swallow you before you could speak. But who? I demanded. Vivian hesitated. There's more than one enemy here, but the one who set you up. The office door suddenly slammed open. We all turned, and Alexander Kingston walked in. Not escorted, not panicked, not defeated, calm, not calculated. You want the truth? He said. Then let's finish it. Vivian narrowed her eyes. You followed us. No, he said. I'm here because everything ends today and I'd rather control how. Lena didn't flinch. You don't control anything anymore. Oh, but I do, Kingston replied. Because I know exactly who used Ethan's login. Silence tightened around us. I forced the words out. Who? Kingston exhaled slowly. Vivian. My head snapped toward her. She didn't react. No shock. No denial. Just stillness. I looked between them. That's impossible. She's the one who warned me. She's the one helping. She helped herself. Kingston cut in. Vivian leaked your login because she needed 2 things. The investigation to accelerate, and someone who wasn't her to take the fall. Vivian's voice was calm. Too calm. And you have proof of that? Not just proof, Kingston said. Motive. He walked toward me. Think, Ethan. Who gains the most if I'm removed? Who has the credentials to access employee data? Who stood by long enough to know exactly when to strike? I stared at Vivian, the woman who warned me. The woman who helped me. The woman who found me the moment the leak broke. You told me not to show up, I said quietly. Why warn me if you plan to frame me? Her eyes flickered, just slightly. Because I didn't want you to sign that contract, not before the investigation hit. You were too smart to waste, but not too important to risk. I stepped back. Was any of it real? The help? The warnings? Yes, she said. Because I don't want Kingston in power. But I also don't want the government to hand this company to men worse than him. She turned to me. You weren't meant to disappear. You were meant to detonate. Lena stepped forward, furious. You used him. Vivian didn't deny it. I chose him, she said. Because no one would see him coming. Not the board. Not the FBI, not the press. And now, he has leverage neither side controls. Kingston shook his head. You don't build revolutions with pawns, Vivian. You build them with allies. No, she replied. You build them with survivors. The room split in two. On one side, Kingston. Corrupt but not stupid. A man who played dirty to win, not to watch the world burn. On the other, Vivian. Brilliant, ruthless, justified, and willing to burn players she didn't believe mattered until they did. And me? The man in the middle. The man both sides thought they could use. Not anymore. I'm not choosing either of you, I said. They both turned. I looked at Kingston? You wanted me to protect you? I looked at Vivian. You wanted me to destroy him. Then I looked at Lena. You wanted the truth out. I turned to the glass walls surrounding us, the floors below filled with employees, the city beyond filled with consequences. I want something different. Lena took a breath. What? Proof doesn't belong in secret folders. It belongs in the light, Kingston stared. You're going public. No, I said. We are. I reached into the folder Lena gave me and pulled out everything, not just the files Lena leaked, but the documents Vivian hid and the contracts Kingston buried, every name. Every false ledger, every offshore company, every illegal deal. Proof that no single villain built this empire. They all did. Vivian's voice cut like glass. You'll take all of us down. No, I said. You took yourselves down. I'm just refusing to keep the lights off, she glared. You're ending your own life in the process. No, I said. I'm starting it. Then I looked at Lena. You said no one sees people like us. Let's change that. She nodded, eyes steady. You're turning this into a global case, she said. Not just a case, I replied. A message. Hours later, every major news outlet, every financial watchdog, every legal agency, every country tied to the corruption, all had the files, not leaked anonymously this time. Signed by me. Ethan Lee, former janitor. Multilingual nobody, future. Something more. Kingston was forced to step down. The board was indicted. Vivian was subpoenaed. Lena became a protected whistleblower. And me? I was called traitor, hero, genius, fool. But finally, I was seen. 6 months later, I walk into a different office now, not to carry a mop, to carry a title. An international foundation that protects unseen workers from corporate exploitation and turns buried voices into headlines. Journalists. Call it a movement. I call it revenge done right. There's still corruption out there. Still injustice. Still billionaires who think people like me were born to clean their footprints. Let them think so. Because the most powerful rebellion is the one they never saw coming. And the floor they once made me clean? One day I signed it. Not with a mop, but with my name.